Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a list of 10 great symphonic beginnings. You know, we did endings, and of course, some of you suggested, quite, I think, naturally and smartly, that we should also do beginnings. And you also mentioned, and I totally agree with this, that we should expand our beginnings to take into account not just symphonies, but symphonic poems and other orchestral works. And I'm all for that, too, because some of the greatest beginnings are not from symphonies, they're from other thingies. And so I have my list of 10, and I know that you're going to want to put in your list of 10. This is so much fun to do. I mean, let's face it. I mean, you know, what could be better than talk about how fabulous all this music is and this stuff that really reaches out and grabs you? In fact, I have a theory. I don't know if this is a correct theory, but you know, you can chime in on this one too, which is if the beginning is great and the ending is great, then what happens in the middle doesn't really much matter as long as it's not too long to put you to sleep. You know, I mean, really, what is it that we have memories of in most pieces? The very opening and the very end. And yeah, okay, sometimes the middle is kind of cool, but basically, a composer can be the most unbelievable, developmental, coloristic, you know, inspired genius in the universe. But if he doesn't know how to start, and if he doesn't know how to end, it isn't going to much matter, is it? It really isn't. You know, Tovey, the great Donald Francis Tovey, divided pieces of music that he was trained into. He said they are modeled on the British railroad system. They consist of different trains, that is, those which start but never arrive, those which arrive but never start, and those which neither start nor arrive. You know, I mean, it's actually kind of a useful observation because there are a lot of pieces about which that's true. And we may have some lists of the British railroad approach to musical classification. He was talking about list tone poems, which are famous for either not starting, not arriving, or not doing either, no matter how much wonderful music they may contain in the middle. So here then are 10 amazing openings, things that reach out and just suck you in. They grab your attention, and most of them never let go. Happily. All right, starting out, of course, where could we begin but with Rickard Strauss's Alzos, Spach, Zarathustra, one of the greatest openings in all music. The sad thing is, this is a piece that starts but never arrives. The opening is amazing, and nothing that comes afterward lives up to it. Granted, it's a fun piece. I mean, I love it. I think it's marvelous. But nothing captures the glory of that fabulous ending. Not even the end to part one, where it kind of comes back, even with like more organ and more bass drum. Still doesn't get you there. That opening couple of minutes is amazing. And I kind of pity Strauss, who wrote it and then sort of must have sat there scratching his head going like, oh dear, what do we do next? Yeah, well, there you go. The great ending, the great beginning, pardon me. Next, well, Brahms, Symphony No. 1. I mean, right? The fascinating thing about the opening, the Brahms first, which is just that bomb pounding, timpani pounding, yummy, basic pounding, is that the grandeur of it is really kind of a modern invention. The way Brahms wrote it, because Brahms was just so anal retentive when it comes to these things, was, you know, poco sostenuto, just a one forte, you know, I mean, you know, he didn't want it to be too loud, he didn't want it to be too impressive, he didn't want it to be too imposing. Well, screw him. Play the living daylights out of it. I mean, it's thrilling when you do. Today, of course, the tendency is to take Brahms at his word and minimize the majesty and power of that opening. But it's in the music. It's in there. You know, with Klemperer and Furtwängler and some of those people got their hands on it. Toscanini, and it's like, ooh, yes. Anyway, the fascinating thing about that opening is that it was an afterthought. The original opening of the first movement of Brahms' first, we know, was just at the Allegro. There was no big imposing introduction. It was just going to go black. Oh, what a letdown that would have been. I can't imagine. But Brahms, being a genius, figured out he needed something at the beginning. And so we got that amazing opening. Next, number 3, Respighi, The Pines of Rome. Oh my goodness. I mean, isn't it just the last watchword for orchestral brilliance, especially in Reiner's recording? Wow, you got the harps are going like this, and the whole orchestra is treble. It's everything from middle C up. You've got the triangle going. There's the glockenspiel, and muted high trumpets going. And then you've got that tune. It's children playing, and it's fountains going off, and sunshine beaming down. And oh my God, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And so you're so in the middle of it. That's what's so wonderful about it. You feel as though you've been completely immersed in the music from the very first note. It's an extraordinary achievement. It really is. And people don't give it much credit. Everybody says, oh, it's the Pines of Rome. It's jolly. It's nice. It's colorful. Well, it's more than that. It really is. There's a visceral quality to that music that's just fabulous. Such presence to it. Amazing. Number 4. Now, I have been pushing the music of Bohuslav Martinu, as you know. And this is not a mere, sort of pedantic or didactic effort on my part, because he was one of the great colorists of 20th century music, and he had one of the most distinctive sounds. I mean, that's one of the hallmarks of a great composer, that you could tell who they are instantly. And the opening of Martinu's First Symphony, when I first heard it, I knew I had discovered a whole world. And that's the kind of composer he was. It's amazing. The opening of the First Symphony. Well, you know what? I'm going to actually make a clip and put it up here. And you're going to hear it. I'm going to play it for you right now. There you go. Isn't that amazing? What is that? It sounds like it's like the equivalent of Salvador Dali's dripping clocks. Or I often said it sounded like bubbles floating up in an aquarium. It has it's this hallucinatory, dreamlike, incredibly beautiful, atmospheric. I mean, it's extraordinary. You don't know where it's going to go. You're awash in just this amazing sonority. And I just think the opening of the First Symphony is phenomenal. The whole piece is wonderful. I've played it, and it's extraordinary. It really is. So after that, something a little bit similar, actually, in terms of its ability to just immerse you in a gentle but incredibly powerful and compelling atmosphere. Vaughan Williams, the Fantasia on a theme of Thomas Tallis. Or by Thomas Tallis. I never get what's of or by or from or whatever. But wow, what an opening. That gentle descending string theme and that incredibly translucent texture. It's just amazing. You're just totally in another world. From the first note, that's the hallmark of a great opening. And that's one of the great ones. So now we're halfway through already. We're making very quick progress. because these beginnings are just, sort of self-explanatory. Now we're going the opposite direction from that sort of beautiful, ethereal, mysterious, atmospheric stuff. No less atmospheric, but of a different type. Mussorgsky, A Night on Bald Mountain. Doesn't matter which version it is. That opening is, it's iconic, right? We all know it when we've heard it. The violin swirling, dum bum 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 bum, and then the brass come in, bum 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 bum, dum, oh my God. If that ain't a witch's Sabbath, then what is? That's why it was so great, the Fantasia. It's a piece of film music. But that stormy opening with, oh my goodness, one of the all-time great conceptions. And Mussorgsky, amateur orchestrator that he was, even in his earliest version, was able to just nail it because the music itself is just so powerful. It almost wrote itself. That's how amazing it is. So that's one of the great ones. Next, now we'll relax a little bit after that. Mendelsohn, the Italian Symphony, one of the all-time iconic openings of any symphony. There isn't any symphony in the repertoire that's even remotely like it. Think about it. That wonderful pizzicato, and the repeated winds, and then the violins come in, yada-dum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-da-da-da, ba-da-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Wow. I remember when I was in college, in Glee Club, our Glee Club conductor was a wonderful conductor. His name was Ken Kiesler, who I believe is still teaching now at the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana. And he's made some very fine recordings for Naxos and whatnot. He's a very good conductor, and he was we were talking about classical music and what we knew and didn't know, and after a Glee Club rehearsal, and he started tinkering with the piano, playing like little bits and pieces to see what we knew, and he went ba-da-dum. I said, it's Mendelssohn. It's that recognizable. In just a couple of notes. Again, the hallmark of a great beginning. You know exactly where you are. I wouldn't have even needed the tune. All I would have needed was plonk. I would have known it's Mendelssohn. There isn't any sonority in all of symphonic music that is that recognizable as that opening note of Mendelssohn's Fourth Symphony. And that's why it's just so spectacular. So next, well, of course, Mahler's Symphony No. 2. Oh, my goodness. Now, people have noted quite correctly that is inspired by the opening of Die Walküre, the storm music from Die Walküre, which begins with on the basses. But Mahler does it so much better. Oh, wow. Wagner's is just a texture, a background, an inchoate storm, whereas Mahler is a genuine symphonic idea, which is sort of a different, but that opening tremolo, like this, right? Then the bass is, oh gosh, that's wonderful. And then, of course, there's the theme goes on, bum 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 bum. Well, that is the source of a wonderful little trick that orchestras like to pull on conductors, which I actually saw happen because I saw Christoph Eschenbach do Mahler 2 with the Chicago Symphony at Ravinia one season. And I got to sit under the rehearsals because I was writing an article, about Ravinia. And so at the first rehearsal, the basses are going bum 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 ba bum ba 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 bum ba bum ba 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 bum ba ba, because it just so happens that those opening notes segue perfectly into the Mexican hat dance. And everyone had a nice little chuckle, and then they went back to it. Bass players tend to have very good senses of humor. I've known quite a few in my life, and they're a jolly bunch. They really are, and good for them, because they have a very awkward instrument to play. So you got to have a sense of humor about it. But the old Mahler 2 Mexican hat dance trick is another one of those indications that we're dealing with a remarkable opening, one that can turn on a dime from tragedy to hilarity. But actually, that opening of Mahler 2, that just got me when I first heard it. It's so unbelievably pregnant with emotional and expressive possibilities. You know right away from the first second that you're in for a big deal. I mean, really, it's a function of great beginnings that they can immediately suggest something of the scale on which the composer is operating. And that opening really says this is going to be a symphony like nothing you've ever heard before. It really does. It's phenomenal. And, two left. Well, Bax. Another report from the planet Baxia Tintagel. Can you hear them celebrating up on Baxia? Tintagel is a seascape. It is one of the most marvelous seascapes anybody ever dreamt of. And it's just glorious. It just comes at you and gets bigger and bigger and bigger as the waves are crashing against the cliffs of Cornwall or wherever the hell Tintagel is. Please don't tell me. I don't care. But it has waves. It has a cliff. You can hear seagulls whipping around on top of the cliff as the waves are going, whoa, crash, whoa, crash. And then the key changes when the horns come in. Ya da 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 ba da da. The timpani going bum boom like this. And, oh wow. What an amazing opening. That's another piece where you could argue probably with some justification that the rest of it never lives up to that opening because it's just so glorious. But, I mean, it can't go on longer than it does. He's got to go on to other things. And fortunately, he's smart enough to end in the same place that he began with that glorious opening. It's just astonishing. However, the last and far from least entry in the greatest of all beginnings is that of Carl Nielsen's Third Symphony, the Sinfonia Espansiva. Now, why is this so remarkable? Well, there are a few reasons. First of all, again, nothing begins like this. Nothing in the whole symphonic repertoire. It's just it's a rocket launching is what it is. It just sets off and releases this exordium of energy. An entire musical paragraph, a big multi-minute musical paragraph just erupts from this opening. It's exceptional. Nielsen was kind of amazing, actually, as a symphonist, in that so many symphonists sort of have to get started. They have an introduction, they start out slow, they do something. It takes them a while to get going. But Nielsen liked to start right in the middle, with a bang. And this is one of his biggest bangs. The opening is just the same chord over and over again, but repeated at shorter and shorter intervals. So it's bump, 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 ba-dum bump, 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 ba-dum bump, and then off you go. It's hard to do, actually. I mean, I've played that. It's difficult to get it exactly right and get it totally in sync. And wow, what an extraordinary opening. And it tells you right away, again, that you're in for what kind of music you're going to be hearing. Music of expansive, inexhaustible, unbelievable energy. That's what it's about. It's all about energy and all about movement. And what a fantastic way to launch the symphony. Again, it doesn't get much attention. I don't think it gets the credit it deserves for being such an amazing start. And a piece that doesn't ever let you down after it starts either, by the way. I mean, that's a piece that knows how to start and how to arrive, which is very good. And what happens in the middle is pretty marvelous, too. So there you go, my friends. 10 amazing openings of symphonies and symphonic poems and other things. I know you have your lists, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they are. Keep on listening, friends. Take care.